It's 5:05 and welcome into a Wednesday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. We start with an update on a story we were tracking yesterday morning as it related to concealed carry permits and some moves and some movement on that in the North Carolina General Assembly. Well, the Freedom to Carry NC Act cleared another hurdle yesterday with a narrow 6-5 vote in the House Judiciary Committee. The House has now officially taken its first step towards clearing Senate Bill 50 since it passed the Senate back in March of this year. The bill would allow individuals 18 and older to carry a concealed handgun without a permit, placing North Carolina on track to become the 30th state to legalize a constitutional carry. So a lot of other precedent, a lot of other states already moving in this direction. Representative Carson Smith, the Republican out of Pender County, said, quote, "I appreciate y'all bringing this before us, and there's been a willingness in the House for the past several years to make this happen. I don't think the same willingness in the Senate. Can you tell me what's changed where y'all do not want to move this bill, but want to move your own bill?" Representative Danny Britt, the senator from Robeson County, said, quote, "I think there's a lot of things that can be changed around here from session to session as far as people's opinion on what's necessary, and we believe now it is necessary, in fact, to get this done. However, the bill's path to law faces a major roadblock if it successfully passes through the House." Democrat Governor Josh Stein on Tuesday suggested to reporters that he would veto the legislation if it passed the House, which could also be his first veto since taking office in January. Stein said when asked about Senate Bill 50 after yesterday's Council of State meeting, quote, "My standard reviewing any piece of legislation is, will this make us safer? I don't know what this version of the bill is today. I was going to see what they ultimately do with the bill. If it doesn't make us safer, and the previous certainly did not, I cannot support it. The legislation as written removes the requirement for concealed carry permits while maintaining the current permitting system for those that want reciprocity to carry a concealed firearm in other states. It also includes increases in penalties for gun-related crimes and a scholarship fund for children of first responders killed or disabled in the line of duty. During the committee meeting yesterday, Democrats raised strong objections. Representative Deb Butler, the Republican out of Democrat out of New Hanover County, pointed to data showing increased gun violence in states where they have adopted permitless carry. She told her fellow committee members, quote, "I don't understand why in the world we would do this. I think we all have to recognize that we had an example of a mass shooting in Catawba County 2 days ago, and 11 people's lives and their families are probably ruined. And here we sit talking about more guns. For the life of me, I don't understand it. I certainly cannot support this bill." Gun right advocacy groups, including Grassroots North Carolina, applauded the bill's advancements, while gun safety groups like Moms Demand Action strongly opposed it during the public comment period. With Stein's likely veto, Republican leadership would need to secure 3/5 majorities in both chambers to override that, a task that was easier during last session when both chambers held a supermajority. Senate Republicans currently hold that same supermajority, but House Republicans are just one vote short, meaning that any override effort will require a unified attendance and careful vote counting, as any veto override may hinge on attendance numbers and essentially just one vote. As the bill heads to the House rules and eventually the floor, behind-the-scenes calculations will likely intensify. We will continue to track this legislation. North Carolina potentially becoming the 30th state to legalize constitutional carry. We've got some more details on the legislation this morning on our website, carolinajournal.com, where it's now 5:09, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. As we covered earlier this week, with the start of June brings forward the start of hurricane season. It also brought forward the start of increased insurance rates across the state of North Carolina. To walk us through some of those details this morning, Teresa Opeka, carolinajournal.com, joins us on the News Hour. Teresa, insurance rates are a rather controversial subject in the state of North Carolina. we do have some rate increases, but this has been a story for well longer than just June 1st. This has been an ongoing process for the last couple of months.
Yeah, it has, Nick, for having me this morning. So, yeah, this no one wants to hear anything going up, right? Because we've got other things we're worrying about, whether it be gas or price of food, and now our homeowners insurance has gone up. So, yeah, as of June 1st, the rates on average rose about 7.5%. And more good news, they're going to rise another 7.5% on average a year from now, June 1st, 2026. This was all part of an agreement that North Carolina Insurance Commissioner Mike Causey came to with the North Carolina Rate Bureau, and they represent homeowners insurance companies across the state. He announced that agreement back in January, and actually that increase, 7%, you're like, oh, everything's going up. It was significantly less than the 42.2% rate increase that the Rate Bureau originally wanted. So, you know, everything's relative, but it still doesn't help at this point.
Well, and I'm glad you bring that process up. I'm sure most folks, obviously they get their insurance bill every year, but Teresa, they're probably not super clued into the process. As I understand it, there's this entity called the Rate Bureau that has to get an approval for it. Can you walk us a little bit through that process and how we ended up at this 7% on average this year and 7% next year?
Sure. So the Rate Bureau, they made the request originally in January 2024. They had some hearings across the state. Many homeowners and others, voiced their concerns at all different public comment forums. There was one back in January of 2024. They also did it through email and mail. And as expected, nobody was in favor of an increase. I mean, you could see that across the whole state. Rates in coastal areas, they were estimating like Swansboro could go as high as 71%, even maybe 99% in Emerald Isle. That's unthinkable, unimaginable. But those in the mountains were supposed to see the lowest increases. So yeah, they put the request in first. They had a bunch of hearings. People wrote in through email, mail. And the insurance commissioner went over all of that, took all that in consideration. And like he said, they just came to that, that agreement that went back and forth with it. And they also could have actually gone to court with it, but they avoided that. So that's basically what the process entails.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that court piece to it, because that's a very interesting part of this. They can either essentially duel it out in court, or they can come to some sort of agreement with the insurance commissioner, who is currently Mike Causey, who was last year, and then, of course, was successful in his reelection back in November. And Teresa, I'm glad you brought up some of those rates. As I look at the chart here this morning, beach areas in Brunswick, Carteret, New Hanover, Onslow, and Pender County, the Rate Bureau requested a 99.4% increase in insurance rates, as you noted. Almost unimaginable, but that was their request.
Oh yeah, unbelievable. Like, okay, why don't you just make it 100 and call it a day, right? 99%. Yeah, unimaginable rate increases that they wanted to do. So at least they did negotiate a lower rate. Again, nobody wants to see anything go up, but I mean, almost 100%. I can't imagine what that would be like and how people are going to survive. Like, okay, now I got to set aside that much more money a month or a year, or however you pay your insurance. It's just not great.
Well, and you mentioned that it's about a 7% average overall, but kind of honing in on one of our major metros across the state. We've got the kind of the Wilmington, Raleigh, Charlotte area. The average around those areas seems to be closer to 10%. It's also going to be another 10% next year, Teresa. This is going to be a significant impact for homeowners and property owners across the state of North Carolina. As over the span of 2 years, they're going to see their insurance going up by an average of 20%.
Oh yeah, it definitely, it's not a good thing. Like I said, it's better than what they wanted, but still it's 20%. And you have something happened in Wake County Commissioners, which is the Raleigh area. They voted to, I believe it was cut any kind of help for housing, cut EMS spending, cut things of that nature, and also raise property taxes, all in addition to helping the Wake County public school system which we all know if you keep throwing money at something like a school system, it really isn't helping all that much. And I'm getting a little off topic here, but just trying to put, a little more perspective to this is that they cut money for housing and are raising property taxes, taking that money, like robbing Peter to pay Paul. And it doesn't work. So that's also going to hurt people. So yeah, I mean, 20%, that's a big figure over the next 2 years.
And property reevaluation does continue in many municipalities across the state as well. It's mandated every 8 years. A lot of places do it in 4-year increments. So many folks, as you noting, Teresa, also seeing a property tax increase, then an insurance increase, of course, all of the increases as it relates to their day-to-day lives. We've got a full chart this morning over on our website with all of the various rates. It's even got a list of zip codes for certain areas of North Carolina as well. Where can folks check out that full chart and learn what their rates are going to look like over the next couple of years?
Sure, they can head on over to carolinajournal.com.
Teresa Opeka joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:16, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Time to get a look at the roadways on your early Wednesday morning commute with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. Good morning.
It's 522. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. President Donald Trump's 50% tariffs on most imported steel and aluminum products went into effect as the clock struck midnight and rolled over to Wednesday. This is the same day as his deadline for trading partners to give their best offer and bids to avoid import tax rates on other goods from taking effect. Late on Tuesday, Trump signed an executive order proclaiming to start this implementation starting today. His announcement last week to increase tariffs on steel and aluminum imports that have been in place since March from 25 to 50%. That new rate went into effect at 12:01 this morning. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett said at a steel industry press conference yesterday afternoon, quote, "We started at 25% and then after studying the data more realized that it was a big help, but more help is needed. And so that's why the 50% is starting tomorrow, aka today." The increase applies to nearly all trading partners, with Britain being the only exclusion, since it is the only country so far to have reached a preliminary trade agreement with the United States during a 90-day pause on a wider array of U.S. tariffs. Steel and aluminum imports from the UK will continue to be taxed at 25% until at least July the 9th, so about a month or so more on that. About a quarter of all steel used in the United States is imported, and the increased tariffs will hit strong U.S. trading partners like Canada and Mexico. Census Bureau data shows and backs up some of that data. The two U.S. neighbors rank number 1 and 3, respectively, in steel shipment volumes to the United States. And with those details, Canada is even more impacted by aluminum duties, as it is the top exporter to the United States, by far at roughly twice the rest of the top 10 exporters' volume combined. The new Canadian Prime Minister and Prime Minister Carney's office said that Canada was, quote, "engaged in intensive and live negotiations to have these and other tariffs removed." And the economic minister in Mexico emphasized that the tariffs were unsustainable and unfair, especially given that Mexico imports more steel from the United States than it imports to any other country. With the trade representative saying, quote, "It makes no sense for the United States to levy a tariff on a product in which you have a surplus," adding that Mexico would seek an exemption from that increase. It's also noted by the Census Bureau that the U.S. receives about half of its aluminum from foreign sources. The tariff increase shook the market for steel and aluminum throughout the earlier parts of this week, but particularly for aluminum, which has seen a price premium more than doubled so far this year. With little current capacity to boost domestic production, import volumes are likely to remain steady unless the price increases undercut demand. The White House also wants trading partners to submit their proposal on Wednesday for deals that might help them avoid Trump's Liberation Day tariffs that are slated to go into effect next month. Officials have been in active talks with several countries since the Trump administration announced a pause on those tariffs, but a deal with Britain, as I mentioned, is the only one reached so far. So obviously we'll continue to keep an eye on those details. Turning our attention to the impact here on North Carolina, we have heard from some representatives in North Carolina. Howard Waltz III, who is the president and CEO of InSteel Industries, that is a company that has their headquarters located in Mount Airy, North Carolina, told the Carolina Journal last week about some of these steel and aluminum imports. Quote, "China is different," noting that China is almost solely responsible for the sad state of affairs that exists in the steel industry worldwide. That's because China exports more steel than the United States, the entire size of the U.S. market, and they export it at an ever low price. This is no price low enough because the companies aren't forced to make a profit. As I mentioned, InSteel Industries is headquartered in Mount Airy, but has 10 plants across the United States. The company manufactures infrastructure and construction projects, including various amounts of foundations and other sorts of building supplies across the U.S. According to Waltz, he says, quote, "Out of sight, out of mind. The average person wouldn't really understand what we do, but it's essentially reinforcement for anything constructed out of concrete. The reason managed trade doesn't work is that there is no one smart enough to manage it." Waltz was one of the industry leaders that spoke at a panel discussion last month in Raleigh that did include former Vice President Mike Pence, discussing some of the concerns that China's approach to tariffs is different from the United States regarding its impact and its role in trade. Waltz explained that the impact of fluctuating tariff situation on InSteel, the company he's the CEO of, noting that most of the company's capital equipment comes from abroad and therefore has the potential to be subject to tariffs. Wolf described the nightmare that has ensued in recent weeks as trying to understand the magnitude of the impact and which tariffs apply to them and which ones don't. Additionally, Waltz explained that InSteel had made commitments, but that the industry had been uncertain because of some of the ongoing fluctuation of tariffs. Machinery and parts have been ordered, but the cost of goods are just suddenly unknown. With Waltz telling the panel, quote, "That's just not the way to run a business." Steel continues not to be the only industry that has experienced a pretty high level of uncertainty due to tariffs and the ensuing trade war. Many manufacturers, including those that deal with electronics and textiles, have echoed similar statements about the uncertainty regarding the price of goods. Waltz explained that the 25% steel tariff that was reimposed on Mexico and Canada earlier this year had a huge amount of uncertainty. He made those comments before this 25% went into effect earlier today. This impact on the steel industry is a little bit of a rollover from the first Trump administration. The president did originally put some pretty heavy tariffs on the steel industry back in 2017 during his first term in the Oval Office. We'll continue to watch how this unfolds and let you know what the impact is here on some businesses and producers in North Carolina. We've got some additional details on the steel industry on our website this morning, carolinajournal.com. The headline to search for: Tariffs create uncertainty in NC steel industry. Again, you can read those details over at carolinajournal.com, where it's now 5:29, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We will get another look at your early morning commute on a Wednesday with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. Good.
And you're live.
It's 5:37. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Homeowners insurance rates went up over the weekend as we kicked off the month of June, making owning a home in North Carolina more expensive. Rates increased on average by 7.5% as of June the 1st, and unfortunately will rise another on average 7.5% on June 1st of next year. The increase was part of an agreement between the North Carolina Insurance Commissioner, Mike Causey, and the North Carolina Rate Bureau, which represents homeowner insurance companies in North Carolina. He announced the agreement back in January of this year. The increase is significantly lower than the 42.2% rate increase that the Rate Bureau was originally seeking. In addition, the agreement prohibits the Rate Bureau from undertaking an effort to increase rates again before June 1st, 2027. The request, we have to go all the way back to January of 2024 when a multitude of homeowners and others from across the state voiced their concern at a public comment forum that happened in late January of last year. As expected, no one was in favor of increases, which could have seen rates in coastal areas like Swansboro and Onslow County going as high as 71.4%, and places like Wrightsville Beach having their insurance go up 99.4% in just 1 year. Those in the mountains were expected to see the lowest increase between 4 and 20%, although that number may change within the context of extreme flooding that the area saw from Helene. Taking a look at some of our more major metro areas this morning, Durham and Wake County, they will see an average of 7.5% over the next couple of years. Looking at Mecklenburg and Union counties, 9.3% this year, 9.2% next year. That does also include the city of Charlotte as well, so an almost 20% increase over the next 2 years for your homeowners insurance. And looking at some other cities across the state as well, the Wilmington area seeing a very similar rate to that in Charlotte, almost 20% over the next couple of years. In the mountains, seeing some lower rates. However, that is likely to probably be adjusted over the next couple of years when the Rate Bureau comes back and looks for some of those higher totals. Causey told the Carolina Journal in an interview earlier this year that once his office finds out about a proposed rate hike, they'd notify the press and ask for public comment. Most, if not all, of the comments are not in favor of a rate hike, but by state law, the insurance commissioner is required to set up a court hearing date that runs about 10 months out. In the meantime, as granted by statute, the insurance commissioner can negotiate settlements if the insurance industry is willing to enter into those negotiations. When settlements are negotiated, well, they do not go forward to court, and they are agreed upon between the Rate Bureau and the insurance commissioner. This time, however, both sides were very far apart, according to Insurance Commissioner Mike Causey, and for many months were unsuccessful in making any progress in negotiations. In a January press release, he noted that homeowners will save on average approximately $700+ million in insurance premiums over the next 2 years compared to what the insurance companies originally requested. Now, homeowners can take steps to lower their insurance premiums, according to the National Association of Realtors. One of the best ways is to shop around, as quotes on the same home can vary significantly from company to company. They also note things like maintaining a good credit score, having homeowners and auto insurance policies with the same company can offer some bundling discounts. There's the opportunity also to raise the deductible if you can't afford the monthly premiums. You can lower those by raising your deductible. Plus, they've got other things, including annual reviews and other various insurance programs. We've got a list of all of those recommendations from the National Association of Realtors this morning over on our website, carolinajournal.com. The headline, North Carolina homeowners insurance rates rose over the weekend. Those details again over at carolinajournal.com, where it's now 542 News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Many folks across the state of North Carolina, of course, keeping an eye on what is going on out west. More than 6 months ago, Hurricane Helene left so much devastation and destruction. Fortunately, recovery is beginning out west, and to provide us some details this morning on an effort to drive business in western North Carolina this morning, Teresa Opeka, CarolinaJournal.com, joins us on the News Hour. Teresa, the small businesses really got hit hard. Obviously, everybody did, but you look at so many of these communities that were destroyed and so many folks that have left areas and have been gone for months now. That is a major impact on small business. What are you learning this morning?
Sure, Nick. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it was devastating for so many businesses, so many people in the area, with the loss of life, loss of businesses, some seeing their livelihoods literally being washed away by Hurricane Helene. But they are making a comeback, and this week is being promoted as Western North Carolina Open for Business Week. Found out about this from Governor Josh Stein. He was talking at the council state meeting on Tuesday, how, people are all getting together and trying to drum up tourism for that part of the state. As I just mentioned, the Western North Carolina Open for Business Week is being, drawn across many chambers of commerce in the western part of the state, including Boone and Blowing Rock. They're going to be highlighting events across the region this week. And they're also going to talk about the work going on this summer with local businesses, event organizers, and others to promote that area. And they said they are resilient and ready and open for business. So North Carolina's First Lady Anna Stein kicked it off yesterday in Watauga and Ashe counties. And our own governor went on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert Monday night to talk about how Western North Carolina is open for business. And just to promote that and get tourism, funneling back through in that area.
Teresa, I guess I'm going to show a little bit of my ignorance on this. I had always been of the mindset that the Western North Carolina economy was far more prominent in the winter months. But as we've been watching this process unfold over the last couple of months and watching various state and federal monies flow out west, it turns out you would assume the beaches are the big hot area, and of course they are during summer tourism, but there's a lot of tourism even in the western half of the state in the summer months as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you're right. You would think summer beach, right? We're all going to the beach, but a lot of people maybe like to have maybe a little bit of a cooler time in the mountains. And that's where they head. They head to the mountains, they go kayaking, they go fishing, go exploring all the different attractions that are out west. And I guess it's from summer, fall, and winter that the western part of the state does see a lot of tourism. So, like the governor said, he wanted to go on, national TV and tell everybody, hey, the Western North Carolina is open for business, and just promote that, and and promote getting out there. So yeah, I mean, it's like he said during the meeting, he said, if you go to a favorite place in Western North Carolina, go back. If there's a small town you've never been to, there are so many jewels across the western part of the state that need to be explored, and definitely need your business, because they put so much hard work into repairing and rebuilding, like the town of Marshall. He commented to reporters after the meeting that they put so much hard work into this. It shouldn't be all for naught, that that they really should be get the economy rolling back in those areas.
And we've, of course, seen over $1.5 billion out of the General Assembly flow into Western North Carolina. We continue to watch budget negotiations that continue this week in Raleigh. And Teresa, one of the main things that's being discussed between lawmakers is Hurricane Helene relief, and a significant amount of money being funneled to local governments so that they can do things like make street repairs and get sidewalks back open and work on getting utilities restored, because in many areas, those are still major issues. And obviously a small business can't operate if you can't access the street on that the business is sitting on.
Oh, exactly. You got to have all that put in first before anybody can come there and, like you say, walk down the streets, go into local shops, maybe a coffee shop, go visiting different places. So yeah, that's all imperative. And Governor Stein talked about his second Helene funding request of over $891 million to the General Assembly. He says that includes provisions for small business development and infrastructure, firefighting, fire prevention, all things of that nature. And he said he was pleased that there is a separate bill in the House, and the Senate included some money in their budget for that the western part of the state as well. And also, as a reminder, at the Council of State meeting, we had Treasurer Brad Briner, say the deadline for applying for the Helene cash flow loan program, which is for for communities that were affected by Helene. The deadline to apply for that is this coming Friday. So that's important to note as well. In case anybody hasn't applied for that, that deadline is fast approaching.
And while a lot of work has been done, there's still a lot to go. And even the governor mentioned this, I believe, during the interview. He talked about the fact about Marshall, North Carolina, with all of the work that's gone on there, Teresa, still only 40% of those stores are open. There's a long way to get to 100 there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a long road ahead. He said, a lot of it, actually, the 40% actually flowed down, the river because of Helene. So yeah, it's a long road ahead for all those people, that's why they're stressing this week. And it goes beyond this week. It's like, come back for the summer, come back for the fall, for the winter, because businesses, the people in that region really do need the tourism. They need the money flowing in.
Teresa, you've got some additional quotes this morning, including that interview that Josh Stein gave earlier this week. Where can folks go and find that this morning?
Sure. And there's also a little chit chat that Auditor Bolick had, and we'll give a little taste of that coming up as well. Just so people can be a little more interested in finding out, they can head on over to carolinajournal.com.
Teresa Opeka joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:48, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We will get another look at the roadways on your Wednesday morning commute with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thanks a lot, Nick. And North.
It's 5:53. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. For those that have been following the constitutional carry debate, it's been ongoing for many years in North Carolina, also known as permitless carry. It did clear a major hurdle yesterday in the North Carolina House as the House Judiciary Committee voted 6-5 to move the legislation forward. With that, the House has now taken its first step towards clearing Senate Bill 50 since it passed the Senate in March. That legislation, as written, would allow individuals 18 years and older to carry a concealed handgun without a permit, placing North Carolina on track to become the 30th state to legalize constitutional carry. However, the bill's path to law faces a major roadblock if it successfully passes through the House. Democrat Governor Josh Stein on Tuesday suggested to reporters that he would veto the legislation if it passed the House, which could also be his first veto since taking office in January. Stein told reporters, quote, "My standard reviewing of any piece of legislation is, will this make us safer? I don't know what the version of the bill is today. I was going to see what they ultimately do with the legislation. If it doesn't make us safer, and the previous version certainly did not, I cannot support it." The legislation, as of right now, removes the requirement for concealed carry permits while maintaining the current permitting system for those that want the ability to carry with reciprocity in other states. It also includes an increase in penalties for gun-related crimes and a scholarship fund for children of first responders killed or disabled in the line of duty. During the committee meeting yesterday, Democrats raised strong objections to it. Representative Deb Butler, the Democrat out of New Hanover County, pointed to data showing increased gun violence in states that have adopted permitless carry. She told her fellow committee members, "I don't understand why in the world we would do this. For the life of me, I don't understand it, and I certainly cannot support the bill." Gun right advocacy groups, including Grassroots North Carolina, continue to applaud the bill's advancements, while gun safety groups like Moms Demand Action strongly opposed it during the public comment period in front of the House Judiciary Committee yesterday. With Stein's likely veto of the legislation, Republican leadership would need to secure a 3/5 majority in both the House and the Senate to override a governor veto, a task that was much easier in years past, specifically last session, when both chambers held a supermajority. Senate Republicans currently do hold that 3/5 supermajority, but House Republicans are just one seat short, meaning that any override effort will require unified attendance and careful vote counting, as any veto override may hinge on literally just one single vote. As the bill heads to the House rules and eventually the full House floor, you can imagine that some of those behind-the-scenes calculations will be intensifying, and that will be the case for really all of the legislation that we have talked about over the last couple of months. If Governor Josh Stein is to veto those various bills, well, House Republicans are going to try and have to figure out how they can get over that veto override speed bump. We'll track the details over at carolinajournal.com. That's going to do it for a Wednesday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 5 to 6, right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.